Good morning, Aaron Doan from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance.
Good morning, Chris from WMR. Hot 99.
I know. It's too funny. By the way, Aaron filled in for me a couple weeks ago. He was hanging out at the 1031 stop right there on 10 and 31. And it is at 10 and 31.
That's where it's located.
And you did a great job, by the way.
Well, thank you. I was only just a little bit nervous. It's one thing is being in this position and people would listen and go, I could never do that even be on the radio. Mm-hmm. It's a whole nother thing to be in the lead. I can tell you that now.
Well, you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
And I was calm and collected. I'm like, hey, I'm heading to I had to go to Grand Valley to do a game that afternoon, and I'm listening to him on the way down, and he's like, yeah, he's doing good. You can replace me. You know what? That's what we need to do. Switch jobs for
switch jobs do for insurance.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. No, I would destroy your practice. I'm sorry. I apologize about that. But we are talking with Aaron Doan from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance this morning, and let's chat about this topic is getting out of debt because when COVID happened, there was a lot of people that were getting the stimulus checks, additional income there that they were able to put away because we weren't doing anything, right? We weren't shopping. We weren't, just eating out at restaurants as much. But now it sounds like the average debt that people have starting to creep back up to that high that was just a few years ago. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's with the not having all the government money, and that's a big place where that spending was mostly exhausted last year, and then going through the inflation that people have gone through this year, just making ends meet. They've had to put a lot of their bills on credit cards, and that's increased the debt for sure.
Mm-hmm. And so we're going to dive into that topic this morning. And I guess even before we start, the relationship between insurance and debt, is there a factor? Is there factors? People probably have a little bit of that idea that, hey, if I'm in debt or I have a low credit score or any of that kind of stuff, does that factor into some of the insurance rates? Does that play at all into that kind of stuff?
It can definitely, especially nationwide. I mean, one of the things we've watched over the years is, people that take, more liberties to have some challenges with credit actually do tend to have a few more claims. And that's not just, something that seems, to be doing by the insurance industry, but it is, statistically by a couple of universities about 15 years ago was a thing. Now in Michigan, by law, you can't check credit. Wow, he was going fast. You cannot check credit. Yeah, slow down, please. You cannot check credit for auto insurance premiums and renewals, but it still is available to be able to be done in the homeowner. So in general, the reason insurance, like State Farm being a holistic insurance and financial services company, debt is a big part of what happens for people in terms of, being able to perhaps even pay for an insurance they really need for their family. For example, you don't have to have life insurance on your own. You don't have to have disability income insurance on your own. But if you don't have it at work or there's gaps at work, you could have a serious exposure for not being able to pay for your mortgage or be able to bring income home if something happens where you get really hurt or you prematurely pass away. So it's not very fun things to talk about, but debt can affect you for protecting your family, and we think it's important to help people the best we can to stay out of debt and to get out of debt if they are.
All right, good information to get us started here in this topic. And over the next few minutes, and by the way, you provided a link, you and your team, Heather and the team there, providing a link to State Farm Insurance, which has these calculators, quite a few calculators that will help the listening audience and the viewers out there as we progress through this topic. And that's important to be able to actually crunch some numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, I think in today's society, people really like those hot links that they can get into some tools to help them. Mm-hmm. And in fact, if you go to this link that we're having on from the statefarm.com, there are actually, Chris, 17 different links besides just calculators, but there's creating a budget worksheet, just expenses that are increased over this past year or two with health insurance and education costs. Those elements all play a factor in stretching people's budgets, affecting what people can pay for or not. And that I think this link could actually help give you a tool to really lay down and get some things in writing about what your exact situation is and start to attack it.
All right, so let's look forward to that.
And what would you, how would you organize or prioritize debts? Like, do you have a recommendation or?
Well, I think there's two different ways, and we did talk about it a little bit off air, Janelle. And one way is to, let's take my smallest debt, right? My smallest credit card debt or consumer debt, and just knock those off, right? Which is great, because then all of a sudden you're reducing the quantity, the number of debts you might have. Because some people may have, credit card or consumer debt on 4 or 5 cards and a consumer debt. So they all of a sudden have 6 different debts they're working with. And just for stress levels, that's one way. Another way, and I kind of prefer this, is to look at your highest interest rate, because that particular card is know that and have it written down. Again, I think it's so powerful when you know exactly what your debt is per month, what that interest rate is, and what you're paying or what you could be paying, perhaps on that highest interest. Because when you look at the actual credit card statement, it'll say how much actually just interest, not principal, you're paying. So I don't know if that makes sense, but
well, at that point, if you're making little payments towards it, you're really only paying the interest rate.
Yeah, so you've got to get a little bit above so you can get some of that principal down. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
And cut those credit cards up. Maybe that's not a good recommendation.
Well, I think people will say that, well, that hurts my credit. Well, I don't know. My perspective is if you have decent credit and you let's say you pay the minimum and you're consistent. Everybody needs to hear that too. Mm-hmm. If you're not, get on that in terms of paying the minimum on every single debt you have, just to make sure your credit score stays good and stays up. Mm-hmm. But what Chris is talking about is, you have to call in and cancel your credit cards. So we've kind of always limited, Kathy and I, to a couple of credit cards, and maintain that. And then I have 2 at work, and it just makes life simpler, a little less stressful to not have 4, 5, 6 cards flying around with debt on them.
Right. And I believe it's like up to 30% is the only thing that you want to use, because you don't want to really max them out.
Yeah, there's people that will max them, right?
Right.
And we're getting closer to that. I mean, now with the average going above, I think it was $9,500, we're getting closer and closer, unfortunately, in our country to where we were in 2008, which was an average of $11,000 credit card debt. So we're heading there, and and as a society, we all need to do our best to get on this and look for some solutions to help in this space.
Yeah.
If you're just joining us, we're talking with Aaron Doan from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance this morning, and talking about how debt and insurance and life in general comes into play when it comes to, especially at this time of the year. A lot of people were like, well, you know what? Christmas is important. Holidays are important. We've got to take care of the family. We're going to go shopping. We're going to do this, all that, and we'll deal with it next year. That necessarily isn't the best solution either, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it's probably coming up with a budget first. Again, what is your number? Like, let's just say your number is like, I'm going to do something for each of my kids. It's not going to be perhaps even what it was the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years, with dollars being stretched so thin for so many families, is perhaps you say, okay, we're going to do $25 or $20 per kid or per family member, or $50 or whatever that number is. But what I'd recommend is come up with that number first and stick to that number, as difficult as it may be, because perhaps in other years you did $100 per child, in terms of your children. So I think that's really important to come up with that number now before you go shopping.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, sales and everything's a good idea too. Like, Meijer has their Santa Bucks.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Black Friday sales, anything like that. Like, get it now before you're, going more towards the holidays.
Or paying full retail in that particular case. Mm-hmm. It's important. State Farm Insurance says list your debts. Why do you think that's important to understand that?
Well, I think it's a lot with life. Let me just say that it's challenging to do, to take notes on anything or to keep track of things in writing, whether you do that through the computer, it's really powerful to handwrite your debts out on a sheet of paper. I think it's just human nature to say it's fine, whatever it is, and we're just working toward it. But if you write it down, there becomes, I'm just telling you from my experience, a whole nother level of ownership of what's going on and realization. It's like a self-actualization of like, okay, wow, I can see it all in front of me. I've written it down. Now I need to start coming up with how I'm going to attack it. But having it in writing is the first step. And then I would recommend, like, let's say a lot of people I know on the weekend, especially on Sundays, are like, okay, we got to get together with your significant other and just talk about what are our bills, what's going on, and bring that sheet out, a list of your debts. And I would recommend doing it weekly. If you do it Sundays, then get it out on Sundays. Every week, don't miss until you kill that debt thing. Get rid of those credit card debts.
Absolutely. We're talking with Aaron Doan from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance. Mitch Foster, he chimed in and said, very similar to Dave Ramsey, which you and I chatted about before we went on the air. And Mitch and his wife, they follow the Dave Ramsey plan, and I do just a little bit of that. My goal is pay off your smaller debts, and I don't have anything. I believe. Let me just clarify. Yeah, nothing that I have as a debt is interest bearing out there. So everything is, and again, it's not a boastering thing. It's a matter of just figure out what you have. And what you need. Like if I don't have the cash on hand in that, related to that debit card, I don't carry a credit card, not a single credit card. And I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, some people, like we talked about, you want to make sure that your debt or your credit score is good, but whenever I'm checking the bank, and I check my bank account every day, and I adjust as we go. If there's a new debt that comes in, see how quickly I can get that paid off, and then once it's paid off, put more towards that other debt, right? As much as you can, so you can get that paid off. But everybody is different, and everybody is in their same different situation. So the first thing you want to make sure you do, or one of those first things, Aaron, is create a budget, right? To make sure that you know what you can afford and what you can pay off and how quickly you can pay off, right?
Yeah, if you don't have a clear understanding of where your expenses are, from your current bills and your receipts, I think it's an important time. This is a great time of the year to do that. I think we get so busy seasonally in our area where we live, in our community, that oftentimes we're running hard. If we are a seasonal worker or we're a seasonal business owner, dealing with people that come into our community, this is the time of year to go, okay, let me get an average of what am I spending per month. Again, put it on a sheet like you're talking about, Chris, and then you can have that sheet in addition to the list of debts, and those are two great sheets to kind of just compare and look at. Where are you trending? Are you trending up or down? Let's say even just with heat. Is there anything you can do? Perhaps before everything completely freezes, you really should, we've talked about in this previous shows, but caulk the entire exterior of your house to help with your heating expense. And so, attacking this can be done with littler steps that aren't really expensive, but knowing your budget, clearly what you're spending on everything is super helpful to know. And then what your income is, comparing your income, and do I need to create more income? We talked also off air, like there's still a ton of employers that are looking for, part-time people. Perhaps it's time to really consider, as tough as it is to work another 10, 15, 20 hours, a week, just to try to get ahead of this curve, get ahead of the budget, and all the stuff that's going on with inflation right now.
Well, for sure. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance this morning. We had a listener question come in and says, what does Aaron think of debt consolidation companies in general? Any thoughts there?
I'd say just there's some great opportunities to save some money. Just read the fine print. Know clearly as best you can on what they're doing and how they're doing it. There are many credit card companies. In fact, we represent U.S. Bank for credit cards. Actually, State Farm agents do across the country, and so we have a current plan right now where you can roll your debts into that one credit card and have 0% interest for 21 months. So it's and again, there's many things you want to know about that in detail that you should know, but just evaluate that opportunity and yes, attack it. So you kind of need to come up with a game plan. For instance, if you're going to do these 21 months, what can we put extra in these 21 months to get that principal down, especially not having interest when you roll it all together. Mm-hmm. So yeah, there's some great opportunities to consolidate debt.
All right.
Would you say that people should have like an emergency fund or like a backup card or anything like that?
Yeah, I think, Chris, without having a credit card a credit card, that creates some situations at times where you might need to use it for a period of time and then pay it off that following month. One of the things that happened to me, Chris, which is an interesting story, is back right when we were getting married at our wedding reception, I had one of my great uncles come up to me and said, back in the 80s, starts to date me, but he just said, "Hey, Aaron, there's something coming up here with these credit cards that kind of makes me really nervous. So you guys getting started in your marriage, be very, very careful with these credit card things." And credit cards had existed for a while, but all of a sudden he, is a very wise man, just said, "What I would do if I were you is I would make a commitment to never having credit card debt because I think it's going to ruin the country." And now he was a little over dramatic, but it has affected a lot of people's families, right, Janelle? I mean,
Yes.
just in terms of how this weight can really start to affect families.
Yes, I agree.
Well, we have a lot of resources and information that is even beyond the scope of what we could talk about today. That's at State Farm Insurance. And having that conversation with you and your team, very important. Being able to take those calculators that are available, very important. And we encourage you to do that. And even sit down with you and your team and just talk about debt and how that relates to insurance, how you can get out of debt just a little bit faster. And I think how we can, avoid putting ourselves in debt, especially during the holiday seasons too. I think is going to be part of a good conversation that you can have with your family and as well others from the team from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance.
Yeah, I have a great team, a lot of life experience, different ages with kids, with grown kids that really can give you just a great sounding board. There's no cost to have a conversation with us, and just really down to earth people that are just like you, as our listener, just to know that we're on your side. We're here to help you. Perhaps even you don't want a quote from us on any type of insurance, but what we've found is if we can build a rapport and relationship, Chris and Janelle, and have a conversation on things like debt, it builds that long-term relationship. So we'd love to help you in that space if you want us to.
All right, sounds good. Aaron Doan from Aaron Doan State Farm Insurance joining us this morning here on 102.7 Mom FM and Hot Country Hits 99.9. If they want to reach out to you, phone number, and obviously you're located on the north side of the road between Ludington and Scottville, but how do they reach to you?
Yeah, you can reach us at 231-757-3115. We're open 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. We have 24/7 State Farm service, and you can leave a message, and we'll get right back to you.
All right, sounds good. It is Chris and Janelle in the morning here on 102.7 Mom FM and Hot Country Hits